Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and hello again, colleagues. We heard that this is going to be the 5th time that we voted on this bill, which means that at least 5 times this bill has had changes just on this side. The 5th
is recognized.
No.
Is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and hello again, colleagues. We heard that this is going to be the 5th time that we voted on this bill, which means that at least 5 times this bill has had changes just on this side. And I'm sure there's been more because I know what it's like to be in a judiciary committee and things change and change again and change again. So who knows how many times. And I bring that up because maybe there's a reason this doesn't make it all the way across. Maybe there's a reason. 5 times. I can't think of anything. And I'm not saying there's not, but I was trying to think this morning, has there ever been anything that I've voted on 5 times? I can't think of anything. Y'all will come to my desk and tell me later if I'm forgetting something. But maybe there's a reason. One of those reasons is that this is probably not a priority for very many of you. I'm certain that's true. We've heard stories so far, I think, of 3 DAs that folks seem to have problems with. One, the DA that mishandled, to say the least, the Ahmaud Arbery decision. Gone. Thank you, voters. The situation, I believe, somewhere in Middle West Georgia, removed. Delayed only because our Attorney General didn't stand in the power he had to do something about it sooner. The governor stepped in, got that taken care of. So that leaves one that we've heard about in Athens. That DA, I'm not going to talk about that individual situation. That's not my business for a number of reasons. But that DA was elected in 2020. We're standing here in almost April of 2023. It's a nonpartisan elected official. That means that person is up for election in May of 2024. Little over a year from now. How about we let the voters decide? Even under this bill, the first time somebody can file a complaint against somebody is October 2024. So the voters can deal with it before this commission can. But let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of what changed, because I know I've been up here before this session, second time about this bill, counting other sessions, so y'all have heard from me a lot on this. One of the changes is that now the appointments for the members of this commission, instead of being made by the members of the Georgia Supreme Court, which is what we had in our version that passed out of here, now the individual members are all going to be appointed by partisan elected officials. The usual suspects: governor, lieutenant governor, speaker of the House. But there's one category that stood out to me. I hadn't seen it before. And I thought it was interesting that we are going to advocate for that in this House. Some of the appointments are going to be made by the Senate Committee on Assignments. So governor, got it, big man on campus. Lieutenant governor, speaker, those kind of balance out each other with the chambers. But then the Senate Committee on Assignments gets some extra appointments. So I disagree that we should step in and try to oversee DAs, but I really don't understand why this House would tip the members of this commission in favor of those across the hall. And I also don't understand why we decided to change it from the Georgia Supreme Court making the appointments. That's a significant change. The JQC, which a lot of folks have mentioned, trying to draw parallels with this bill, the Judicial Qualifications Commission, has appointments by governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, but also some by the Georgia Supreme Court. This commission will have none by the Georgia Supreme Court. I think that's interesting. While we're on the subject of Judicial Qualifications Committee, for those that have said, why can't we just have a commission for the prosecuting attorneys when we have them for the judges, in addition to all these things that I'm hearing about folks say that are overlooking prosecutors? Why do we have a Judicial Qualifications Commission? Why can't the state bar just handle the judge's misconduct too? Because not all judges are attorneys. About 40% of the judges that serve in this state are not attorneys, which means the state bar cannot oversee them. So we have to have a Judicial Qualifications Commission. If you are a prosecuting attorney, a DA, or a solicitor, you have to be a lawyer, which means you have oversight from the state bar in addition to all the other things. And I know that's repetitive, but we don't seem to be getting it because people keep coming up here still and saying, this is just like the JQC. No, it's not. The other thing that's different in this bill from the version that we passed out is that the decisions of the hearing panel, the hearing panel will make a decision, they'll be investigated, there'll be a hearing panel decision, and then there's the potential for an appeal. Instead of that appeal going through the Supreme Court, which is what our version in the House had in it, now we're going to set up an appeals process that goes through county superior court systems. But they're different depending on who's doing the appeal, which I find curious. If you are the DA or the solicitor that is appealing a decision, you go to the county superior court where you're elected. But if it's the claimant, I suppose, the person that was complaining about you that makes an appeal, or I guess the commission could appeal, you go to the Fulton County Superior Court, no other place. That seems interesting to me, why you would have different paths for that. And then one of the other big changes, and I've alluded to this a little bit already, but this version allows complaints to be filed as early as October of this year. So I misspoke. First mistake I have ever made from this well, I'm sure. I said October 1st, 2024 was the first time you could make a complaint under this bill, but it's actually October of this year. Still, the DA that folks seem to be concerned about in Athens is going to be up for election in May of 2024, so it's not much longer. But the version that we passed out of this House had the first complaint not being able to be made until April of next year. Those that drafted this version might also want to think about the smartness, that's not really the right word, I'm confused as to how we can have a version that says all the rules for the commission must be established by October 1, and we're also going to start dealing with complaints on October 1. That seems to be a problem, and probably something that happens when you change things and vote on it 5 times. Again, maybe there's a reason that this hasn't passed out. So I want to recap what we're setting up here. This will be repetitive, and I apologize, but this is a big deal, y'all. We're stepping all over elected officials. First, we are going to say that every prosecuting attorney must review every individual case. Now, let's put aside, how are you going to know that? How are we possibly going to police whether a prosecuting attorney has looked at every individual case? Putting that aside, we're saying in this bill that every decision not to charge or to charge can't be the basis for a complaint unless there's bias or conflicts or, quote, factors that are completely unrelated to the duties of prosecution. It's another drafting question. What is the difference between completely unrelated versus related? That's a question. But what does that mean? Now, the last time I was up here to talk to you about this bill, we talked about the situation of little Johnny that got in trouble, had a little too much to drink, or was found with a bag of something in his glove box that he shouldn't have, and mom and dad called the prosecuting attorney and said, useful indiscretion, can we put him on probation, or can we put him in a diversion program, or can we just let this one slide? We talked about Uncle Bob, who got in trouble again. We made the call. Now, I'm not suggesting that any of those things are right. Believe me, I cannot stand the back scratching that leads to some people getting treated differently under the law than others. So I'm not here defending that system. But what I'm telling you, I know as well as you do that that happens. It happens every single day in every community across this state. Now, those decisions that are made because so-and-so went to school with somebody, or yes, that was a useful indiscretion, and we don't want to sideline this young lady or this young man's life for a youthful indiscretion, so we're going to put that in the drawer. That's going to happen. And now every single time it happens, we're setting that person up to be removed, that prosecutor, we're setting them up to be removed from office. That does not seem like a good use of money. But prosecutorial discretion goes further than that. And again, prosecutorial discretion, either have it or you don't. You have it or you don't. That means every single decision. We heard this morning from the well about how solicitors are not prosecuting the crimes of the things you're not allowed to do when you're homeless, tents and blankets and things like that on the sidewalk. They're not prosecuting that. Now when they don't, they're going to be called up for removal. That hardly seems like a good use of our time and our funds and this commission and our elected DAs when we all know that there are bigger problems. And apparently we're doing all of this for what I've heard is one person. Because y'all all know we're not allowed to pass a bill to actually just affect one person, so we have to do this bigger. So we have to create all of these investigation panels for all these folks that are probably doing what the community wants. We heard that from some speakers in the well this morning. Have we heard from the citizens? I would bet a lot of money that the citizens do not want their solicitors prosecuting the homeless for their tents or their blankets or starting a fire or whatever happens. They would rather them go after the rapes and the murders and the armed robberies. So those DAs, those prosecutors are doing what the citizens want, but now we're going to call them in front of a commission, probably made up of no one from their community, to ask them questions about it. I don't think that that is a very good use of our time. So what do the citizens want? Well, since we've now voted on this 4 times, it's about to be 5 times, they voted on it over there. We've gone through, I think this is the 3rd year that we've talked about this bill, maybe, at least 2. And for the most part, folks have gotten themselves back into this chamber. The governor got reelected. The attorney general got reelected. I don't think anyone's that worried that we haven't created the Prosecutorial Oversight Commission, and I think we would be well to finally put this thing to bed, vote it down, and let's move on to things that citizens actually want us to focus on and not one person. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.